Mission Log Supplemental. Number 11. The one with Nichelle Nichols.
Welcome into another episode of Mission Log. I'm Ken Ray, and let me just say...
Whoa, hang on. Hello. I'm John Champion, and Ken, what are you doing?
Well, I'm freaked out, John. We're flying blind here.
What do you mean?
We got no ship. We got no helmsman. We got no science officer. We got no episode of Star Trek this week.
Well, all of that is true.
Whoa,
hang on.
Yes.
We do actually have a communications officer.
Well, that is something. Do me a favor. Have him or her get Starbase 200 on the phone. Okay, because we're like, I don't even know.
All right, we will work on that, definitely, for your sake. It is true, we're between missions right now, but not unlike a good Starship crew, there's plenty to do between Planet A and Planet B. Here's what we have for you, our listeners, over the next few episodes. Next week, the TOS recap. The week after that, a great interview with Richard Arnold. After that, we start the animated series. This week, though, Nichelle Nichols. She sat down with us for an extended interview, and she was fantastic. Am I right?
Yes. I'm embarrassed, actually, that I forgot that's what we... Oh, is my face red? Let's pretend you can see it, and we'll agree that it is.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Nichelle sat down with us to talk about all things Star Trek, and she was really generous with her time. I want to mention that you may hear a little more room noise in this episode than you would normally hear. And picture, if you will, because this is sort of theater of the mind, there's Nichelle sitting across a table. She is festooned in jewelry. She is fabulous and dramatic, and she is gesturing as we talk. And when I listen back to this interview, that's what I hear. So the little rattle in the background of the jewelry and all this, it's just great. And I'm still just sort of mesmerized by her. We have one more bit of business before we get to Nichelle. We're so happy to welcome Connected Data, the makers of Transporter, back as a sponsor for this week's show.
You and I have both had transporters for a while. I'm curious, what's your favorite feature?
My favorite thing is that I have this beautiful piece of glowing technology on my desk.
Is that really it? Oh, God,
no. I mean, aside
you are
from
so form over function, it's crazy.
I know. No, aside from it looking very cool, I think a lot of people don't know that we actually use Transporter in the production of this show because we can share files very quickly, very easily, and securely on opposite ends of the country, and it's sort of like owning your own Dropbox.
Yeah.
It's very, very cool.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, actually. My favorite part of the whole thing is the fact that you can access your stuff wherever you are. And that's if you... Well, I'm an Apple-centric person, so I know that's true for an iPhone, an iPad, or a computer. As long as you have an internet connection, as long as your transporter is on wherever it lives. And it doesn't have to live where you live. I mean, as long as it's on wherever it lives and has an internet connection and you have one, you can access content that's stored on your transporter. And the other thing that I like about it is you do that without the recurring fee.
Yes.
You mentioned Dropbox. 100 gigabytes of storage on Dropbox will run you like $99 a year. Runs me $99 a year. If you already have a drive that you want to use, they have this little transporter. It's $99. And it basically, as you said, turns that hard drive that you have or that storage device that you have into your own personal cloud. So you don't have to worry about other people having access to it, and you also don't have to pay again and again and again to use the storage. It's $99 for one time. That little thing is called the Transporter Sync. Now, if you want a bigger one, they have 1 terabyte or 2 terabyte transporters that you can buy the drives from Connected Data. It's $249 for a 1 terabyte transporter, which is like less than 1 year for 500 gigabytes of storage on Dropbox. Like 500 gigabytes of storage on Dropbox is something like $500 a year.
Yeah.
Or you can spend $250 one time for 1 terabyte, and you know that's your one-time cost, and you got it. So I mean, more storage, more security, one-time fee. Those are some of the things I like about it.
So what we're saying is there are just a ton of benefits to owning a transporter, not the least of which is that you get to own a device called a transporter, which, then you get to say, yeah, I own a transporter.
I'm cooler than you.
Yeah, but you can learn all about it at filetransporterstore.com. Check out the models and offers they have available. Then when you decide to buy one, buy it at a discount. Offer code MLOG, M-L-O-G, will get you 10% off your order. All caps, no spaces, M-L-O-G. And get 10% off when you buy your transporter at filetransporterstore.com. Come with a 30-day money-back guarantee, so you've really got nothing to lose. Beam yourself to filetransporterstore.com to find out more.
Transporter, storage and sharing made simple and secure, brought to you by Connected Data, and we do seriously thank them for supporting Mission Log.
So listeners of Mission Log, here we are with another supplemental episode, but it is not just any other supplemental episode. I'm kind of giddy with excitement because seated not 3 feet in front of me is Nichelle Nichols. How cool is that? I'm sitting here with Uhura, Ken.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
it's cool.
It's a pleasure for me to be able to speak to her. Although I'm not sitting right there. You'll have to get a picture of the two of you, but leave a little space on the other side of Nichelle, and I'll put myself in the picture later.
All right.
Got it. So as we do on the Mission Log supplementals, it's free form and we get to do whatever we want to do. And we thought that it would be so fantastic to have Nichelle here and be able to talk about kind of the big picture Star Trek stuff. Talk about some of the issues and the morals and what happened, and just find out about her journey getting into this show. So I think we just have to start at the beginning, and I want to ask you how you found out about Star Trek and then how you got the role of Uhura. What was your first inkling of Star Trek?
Did you know Gene Roddenberry?
I wish I had.
You would have known. About 3 years before Star Trek, Gene did a series called The Lieutenant. And I went for an interview with a young male actor because it was going to be the series about the two of them, two young people, of African-American descent and his life in the service. And they were to get married, and then this came up, and he got transferred. And she agreed to follow him. She had her own career and everything, and this was a big choice. And so, but she loved him, and they were about to be married, and so she did. She left with him, and that caused some problems with their relationship, and then how they worked it out, along with the problems that he faced in the new Army location. And it wasn't the ordinary kind of story. Of course, Gene never did anything ordinary. And I got cast in that. That was the first time I'd met Gene Roddenberry. And then we did something else, and then we did something else, And he always remembered me. Then I didn't see him for a long while, and somebody said, I was going to Europe. I mean, like tomorrow I was going to Europe. And then Gene called, and he said, come and meet with me. I have something that's probably more interesting than going to Europe. And I said, it better be big, because Europe is my favorite place to get out of America for. That's the only thing that can get me out of here. And so we made it for, I think, that same afternoon or the next morning or something like that. And he said, well, you're not going to Europe. You're going to be in this show. And the only reason he had me, like, really come in, it wasn't to read at all. It was for everybody else to meet me. Oh. And he had already decided and cast me. My agent didn't tell me that, although he knew it. That was that.
Did you have any inkling what you were getting into? Did he say this is what it's about, or this is what you're going to be doing? Did you have any idea what you're getting into?
Never. It was quite something going through it. And because I was going, that was it. I was going to New York. And I came in and said, well, of course I can't do this because I'm going to New York. And Gene Roddenberry said, no, you're not.
So he had a pretty positive opinion of his show,
yes, yeah.
And you must have had a lot of trust.
Just a lot of trust.
Yeah.
And you can't say no to Gene Roddenberry. And, of course, I didn't go to New York. I did something called Star Trek. And he had created, and then he created the role. The role was kind of okay. And then from there, now that he's got me, he just developed it from there. And I loved the role so much. And I had, was giving the honor of donating what I thought to it. So it was truly my role. He had a wonderful way of listening to you and allowing your talent to be in there without taking over, And that's why everybody loved working with him, because you felt responsible to it and part of it because you are in it. You're literally involved in development of the character.
You said that you got to have influence over your role as Uhura, and you said that you had a good relationship in working with Gene. Now, in the process of doing our show, we also hear about the people who did not have a great experience working with Gene. I wonder if you could present kind of that dual nature, some of that contrast.
I think that was probably part of his greatest strength, is because you didn't just love and adore everything that he said. But if you disagreed with Gene, you'd better have a dang good reason and argument for it. And if you did, he gave you the respect of why he said no, or, wow, that's good, let's use it.
Can I ask you a little bit of what that dynamic was like? So when you were there on set and you said that you got to give some influence, did you find yourself going to Gene? Did you find yourself kind of making allies out of people like Gene Kuhn, Herb Solow, Bob Justman? Did you primarily go to Gene Roddenberry and say, hey, I want to do this?
Before Star Trek, I had worked for Gene before.
Right.
Okay, so Gene came first.
May I ask a question? You jokingly said earlier that you had no idea what you were getting into as far as how big it was going to be. A lot of what we do is we look at, we always say we look at the messages and the morals and sort of the philosophy. And I'm wondering, was there a consciousness of that during the show? Or like if you got a script, was there ever any discussion of, here's sort of the big thinking on this? Or was it, okay, well, which page am I on?
Oh, never. What page am I on?
Well, I'm forgive me. I'm being a little shorthand there. I apologize. But was there an air of sort of this, I don't know, sort of this philosophy being laid out, or these big ideas being laid out every week?
The man was bigger than life, But he dealt with you on a common level, and he never talked down to you or thought down to you. In this case, TV series and became, bigger than life. He gave you the respect to disagree. He always got his way, though. But as anybody who knew him knows. But he allowed your input for you to express what it was that you were saying, and he many times incorporated that. So you'd better be dang good at what you're and qualified to argue with him, because he could argue, and he liked nothing better than a good fight. But he was a powerful man, and you benefited from every encounter or an altercation that you had with him. Because if you had a good argument, it wasn't an argument for the sake of arguing. It was for the sake of do you know what you're talking about, or do you know? If you could prove to him that your argument was as good or added to what he wanted to do or accomplish, you were respected. He respected people he worked with. And the longer you worked with him, he didn't have to like you, or you didn't have to like him. He didn't dismiss where you were coming from. He respected it, and he either used it this time or later, and he consulted with you, and that was something unheard of at that time from a producer or director, especially directors. And so, it's either it's my way or the highway, and that's not the way he was. Even if he didn't use what you had to say, you always knew you were respected for your involvement in it, and he respected that highly because it gave him new ideas, and I'd catch him even if he didn't use it this time. He could inevitably come back to, when we had that idea, when you had that idea, we didn't use it then, but what about something like that? He always had you, not just the actor reading and something on the page, but you were part of it. You always knew you were part of it, and you could walk up to him and say, Gene, I've got an idea about this. And he'd say, if he was talking to somebody else or was doing something, he said, okay, let's get, we'll talk about it. Now, I work for a lot of directors, and when they say, oh yeah, we'll talk about it, they never talk about it. It was like, yeah, right. But
it's like when Dad says, we'll see.
We'll see.
During the production of Star Trek or offset, since you knew Gene outside of Star Trek, did you and he ever talk about kind of what the big picture was? Did he...
Oh, God.
Yeah, I mean, did he sort of have this idea of what Star Trek meant in the big picture, what he was trying to say? Did he see it as a platform?
Life in general. The man was bigger than life itself, and he was really this humble kind of, well, the kid knows he wasn't humble. But he was very down to earth. When he knew something, needed to go this way, which was his way, he wouldn't budge from there, no matter whether it was the studio or, they wanted to get rid of me after, well, it's very nice we've used a black actress and this. Now they wanted to get a white actress for my role when they bought it for the series.
So they were ready to can you and hire a white actress to come in and play this role.
Yes, because number one, I think I did 2 or 3 episodes and Gene let me out for a commitment that I had before I'd even signed a contract. And it was a pretty large commitment, it was pretty important to me. And that's why I think people would just work with him any way they could get to work with him, because he had that much understanding, and it wasn't like, well, this is what we're doing. This is, this project supersedes everything. If there were a way for him to let you do other projects without totally interfering with his.
Right.
He'd sit down, talk to you about it, and give you advice, or you could come and talk to him about it, and come away with even a stronger or better understanding of what you're doing.
But he was ready to stand up for you to keep you on the show.
Oh, no. He was not ready to stand up for me. He did.
Okay.
He says, she goes and the show goes.
Wow.
And they've already signed it.
So now, do you think that this was this a racially motivated thing that people at the studio said, get rid of her?
No. The studio was ready to keep, or change, because they just did not have, they did not see me as a solid part of that I could be changed as anybody else probably could have. I mean, you couldn't change, so he told him, you can't change Captain Kirk. Well, let's change Captain Kirk. Oh, no, we can't do that. He's all, that's part of that's why we can't change Lieutenant Uhura.
But it's interesting because there are so many episodes, particularly
and
in
he would
season
never
1.
he would never say, that's why we can't change Nichelle Nichols. He would say, oh, you can't get rid of Captain Kirk, you can't get rid of Lieutenant Uhura.
Well, there are places where they say, within the script, within the show, Uhura, you're the only one who can do this.
Yes.
You're key, you're integral.
He got that written in.
Good.
Exactly.
Good. And you were aware of that when you got that script and you would see that.
And it was Gene who asked me to create my background. Mm-hmm. So I said I was from the United States of Africa. And when he would say, you're the only one who, he would use that from time, little places, but he would use that established me as strongly as Kirk or Spock or what did Jimmy play?
Scotty.
Scotty, yes. You wouldn't say, get another Scotty,
right.
When he said, and that's what Gene would come back at them with.
In preparing for this, I was trying to think of, we get so caught up in what Star Trek means historically. Mm-hmm. I was thinking specifically about you historically. I'm thinking of, forgive me if I'm using the incorrect term, African-American actors or black actors or however you want to say. I want to say it's kind of, you're... I Spy was one of my favorite shows when I was a kid, and I only came to find out later. And I was I wasn't born when I Spy came on the first time, but I only found out later that Bill Cosby's role in I Spy was historical because of,
what level he was on, with his co-star Robert Culp as far as the series goes. Am I right in thinking as far as women go? I mean, Uhura is, to that point, probably the most prominent African-American female on network television, right?
Well, it was a first. Again, as you're mentioning Bill Cosby and his role, it was a first. And we recorded on the same studio, and we would see each other and laugh together about being these firsts and these wonderful roles that an opportunity that we, at the same time, respecting this wonderful opportunity that we had. And Roddenberry, and what was the producer's name?
Sheldon Leonard. Sheldon Leonard produced I Spy, I think.
Yeah, it was Sheldon Leonard. They were very close, and they would laugh about the fact that they had these very different kind of shows from anything else, and that they were so popular. That they, to this day, they're being respected and followed, and hopefully that their series would be as good. But they learned, a lot of people came to Gene, a lot of artists and producers and writers came to Gene and said, if it hadn't been for you, I probably never would have been acknowledged in this industry.
Did you ever experience any negative blowback just by being a black actress in a prominent position on a major show? Either
they didn't dare.
I mean, whether fan mail or studio or anything, was there any negative?
Out of hundreds of fan mail, there's an interesting story about my fan mail. Once a week, they would bring on the show when we were on the set, while we were breaking for them to do the lights or change the lights or something, and bring our fan mail. Well, there would be quite a few for Captain Kirk and for Leonard, and then less but up there for Scotty. And then there'd be 2 or 3 for the rest of it. I'd had the 3 if somebody else had the 1. So I'm walking, and I was excited about that. How nice. And didn't think anything about it. So I'm walking down the set one day, coming from lunch or something, and the 2 young men behind me, and I'm pick up. They're obviously talking about me, and they said, "Well, I want to tell her." And the other guy said, "Well, I don't think we should. Maybe we shouldn't." Yeah, well, I'm going to tell. Well, let's tell her. So I turned around. I said, "Tell me what? Why don't you ever come and get your fan mail and pick up your own fan mail?" And I said, "Well, I didn't even know you could. I don't even know where it is." So they said, "Well, I think you really should." And so I said, "Okay, why?" He said, "Well, a lot of time when they pick up the fan mail, there's more than that." I said, "Oh, really?" They said, "You ought to drive on the set and pick it up from here, though." And I said, "Why?" And they said, "You'll see." And then they give me this big duffel bag full. And I took that home, and little me, my chest went out there. I must have been days reading all the wonderful fan mail.
And that early on, what were fans saying to you? What were they responding to?
Well, number one, it didn't occur to me that this was such a big deal, my being on there. But there was nobody who looked like me on any other show. And then I became aware of just the sheer magnitude of what Gene got away with. He was the first to do it, and they were waiting for him to collapse, waiting for people to write in and, with complaints and everything. Well, he was getting a lot of fan mail and about my being on there, but they weren't complaints. And so the network, there's a difference between the head of the studio and the that everybody on the studio answered to, and the head of the network that we were on, which the studio, including the head of the studio, was bowed to. And one time, the network people came out, and they were always telling Gene when he wanted to do something more with me. Well, it's not us; it's the network. And so we hated the network instead of these guys. Well, the network came out about the second season. And the first thing the head of the network said is, well, I've got this crush on Lieutenant Uhura. I want to meet Nichelle Nichols.
Nice.
That was the end of that nonsense, And he came up to me and he said, I can't believe I'm meeting you. And I wanted to say, I can't believe I'm meeting you either. I thought you came to fire me, but I didn't. And when he left, they came on the set, and when they were getting ready to go, he said, I hope this isn't an imposition, but could I have your autograph? Or my wife told me don't come home without it. And his kids. So I went like, wow, that's really, that was beautiful, And from there on, everything settled in, the whole place didn't collapse because I had a lead role and a continuous role.
As we get to the end of season 1, you famously had decided that you wanted to leave the show. Mm-hmm. You felt like there wasn't enough for you to do within the script?
It wasn't that I felt that I wasn't doing enough, because I was just stunned and delighted to be on, to be one of the main characters on the deck of the Starship Enterprise. Mm-hmm. It was that I had so many offers, mm-hmm. And I'd always worked, and I'd go to Europe and so forth, and I weren't working in the States. I was always I was never out of work if I wanted to be in work. And so I never had a problem about worrying about if Star Trek was not going to have me. But it was my first on television, having a TV role. And then that meant that everybody in the world was seeing, and of course, offers came in like crazy from all over. I go to Gene and said, Gene, he says, how are things going? And I said, just fine. He says, good, they better. And so I said, I just wanted to tell you I'm getting offers from all over. And he says, oh, that's wonderful. It's too bad you can't take them. And I'm going, what you talking about, Gene Roddenberry? and so he said, didn't your agent tell you? And I said, tell me what? No, he hasn't told me anything. He said, we're offering you a contract, for the coming year, for the coming season, we're offering you a contract. And I said, oh, really? Because I got all these offers all over the world. He says, too bad you can't take them. And so it was kind of touch and go there for a moment. And then I really realized, are you crazy? I would rather be on Star Trek. And then he made, I got billing, better billing, and I got better roles. And because I said to him, anybody can play that role. He said, anybody can play that role, yeah, but nobody can play it like you. Now shut up and sign the contract.
Great.
And that was the first time I had a contract.
So then when you came back for season 2,
Yeah.
things were different? Things were better?
Oh, my goodness. Well, once I had that contract for season 2, it put me in a place emotionally that I had no frame of reference to prior to that. I was part of a marvelous cast. I loved that. That was very important. I loved working with my cast members, including Bill Shatner.
Okay, well, wait. I want to ask you about that. Because this is something that I ask people from Star Trek to do every now and then. It's just kind of a mental exercise.
Yeah.
So I assume that a lot of our listeners have not worked in the industry, do not work in the industry. Some do. But I want to walk through sort of a typical day on set. I want to know who you hang out with, and I want to know who you avoid. And I want to know what that dynamic is like.
What was the second question?
Who you avoid. What's the dynamic like when you're on set? Because we hear things about everybody in the cast.
I know, but it's really weird. I didn't go through any of that. Mm-hmm. Maybe because I was so involved with my character and how to make it better and so forth. Not that I didn't see things going on, but nobody had messed with me. They would have really regretted it. But I just liked everybody because I was working. I was working on television. I was working on one of the best shows in the industry. Everybody that I worked with, as I always preface this with, including Bill Shatner, were wonderful with me. We had, I think, because I took my job seriously. Once I came on that set, it was business, and it was studying how Uhura would respond to that, and it always went back to how I created her, because that was one of the things that Gene came to me and took me to lunch, and we talked about my role. This was early when I first came on. He came in, and we went in, and he said, I wanted you to come to lunch with me because I want to get away from the studio. I want to talk to you about the role. What do you think about it? Where would you want it to go, and so forth? And I'm like, wow, you know. And so we talked very seriously about it. And whenever I had an idea or concern, I'd go to Gene at the end of the day and share it with him. And he'd say, let me think about it, you know. And sure enough, he said, he'd come and say, I don't think it's worth your worrying about. You know, I said, okay, it's got from your mouth to my ears, God's ears, you know, and she's listening, you know. And I always felt very, very secure in that, because I understood how he felt about every role and every actor, you know. And so I didn't listen to outside chitter-chatter. You know, I knew it was going on, you know. I was as curious as anybody else. But I wouldn't let it touch me concerning Uhura.
We talked earlier about
a few firsts. Certainly one of the most, I don't know, I guess maybe one of the most famous firsts as far as you and Star Trek would be Plato's stepchildren and the first interracial kiss seen on TV. Was there a big amount of import at the time? I mean, like did you approach that script and say, whoa, this is big? Or did you approach that script and say, oh, here's what's happening with the characters? I mean, was sort of the momentous nature of that understood?
A combination of that, I can say yes. It wasn't like, ooh, but it was like, ooh, okay. It was very interesting that, okay, that's a natural progression, you know. The studio said, ooh. But the New York went, that's interesting. Can we do that? Well, why not? It's already shot. Well, they came out for the shooting. So they called and said, well, we want to see it. And they said, oh, well, we're shooting it this Friday. You know, we're shooting it tomorrow. Make that Friday. We're coming out. I was nervous about it because I was thinking, why are they coming out to just see that? You know, and it came out because they were fans. People don't realize that people that put on shows, you know, top people in the industry in New York, you know, who have the yay and nay power, are fans, can be fans or not, you know. But that won't save the show or kill the show. You know, it won't keep the show or break the show because they've got thousands of people out there that are voicing their opinions, you know. But we had, Star Trek was just loved, you know. Some people didn't love the fact that it was loved. But I heard from some of the powers that be was that they were going to cancel the show and made the mistake of mentioning it over dinner. And the family wouldn't speak to them until he changed his mind.
Can I ask a question that may seem a little out of order?
Mm-hmm.
In that scene in Plato's Stepchildren, the interracial kiss, so the camera moves kind of behind the back of Uhura's head, and we see Kirk facing toward the camera, and he leans down, and they're under the control of these aliens.
Oh, God, the famous kiss.
Okay, but here's the question, and this may seem like a weird question. Was there really a kiss?
Was there really a kiss?
Because from the camera angle,
how many times?
From the camera angle, the way that it's shot,
are you
kind
kidding?
of can't
you
tell.
Don't know Bill Shatner.
Hey, I'm not saying I blame the guy.
Yeah,
all right.
If it hadn't been for Bill Shatner, there were enough. Once it was written, and Gene took a breath because it was okayed. Then everybody got nervous about having okayed it. The closer it got, to the point where, you know, like you shoot a scene and then you do a close up of the scene. They didn't do that with everybody standing around. Everybody relaxes a break while we do this twosome and so forth. They suddenly became all of this. Noise about it, that they didn't do that. They took it and waited till Friday and did our scene at the end of the show. So instead of being off by 4 o'clock, I was off at 6 o'clock. You know, it took up until... And so there wasn't like all of the cast standing around looking or people coming from other places. They dismissed us like we were all gone, and then we knew, Bill and I knew we were going to shoot that, and so that scene, and I think that is the most professional. Well, Bill was always joking, but on that, he was the most serious that I've ever seen him, and he was the most protective of it. And then he would kid me. He goes, "I'm going to get you now." Okay, it was just wonderful. It was the most fun that I had even thought about him as because to me he was Captain Kirk. You did your scene, and then you went and you laughed off the set, and that's like that. But this was about what was going on the set, and this was a first. It was really, really a first for his first interracial kiss on television. And as closer as it got to shooting it, the more everybody became aware. Someone said to me, are you concerned about this? And I said, no, my grandmother and grandfather did it all the time. They kissed all the time. What do you mean? I look like my grandmother, and Bill looks like my grandfather.
We spent a lot of time talking about the TV series. I guess I want to move us, if we could, towards the movies, but you've got a decent sized gulf between when the TV series ends and when the movies begin. And right in the middle of that, I guess you've got the very first. I mean, we didn't know what to call them, I don't think, but I guess you've got the first Star Trek convention at that point. Mm-hmm. Talk to me about what happens between when the TV series leaves the air but before we get to the motion picture. What happens to you and what happens to Uhura, sort of in that time from your perspective?
The fans would. You could apply that to each and every star in the show. What happened, between that time between yourself and that character. To all of us, nothing happened. It just exploded because the moment we went off the air, the fans went bananas and created Star Trek fandom. We never lost track of one another because we were always being invited to a Star Trek convention. Star Trek was the first television show that caused a convention about the show. Now you hear about them for a lot of shows that picked up on it and fans did, but fandom just refused to let the show die. It wasn't anything that we did other than be grateful and be in the show and be grateful for the attention. But they were determined to bring the show back, and the rest is history. But it was all the fans. It was because we're in this business, and no matter how much you love what you're doing, at some point it's going to be the end of that series, or it's going the movie is over, and you have a big party and you go on to your next job. But millions of fans had another idea.
I do want to ask, forgive me, I think a lot of us do this, but I forgot, in between the live action series and the motion picture, there was the cartoon. What's it like to see yourself on Saturday morning? What's it like to turn on the TV and there's a cartoon of you walking around, a cartoon of where you used to work?
Well, I saw it first because I did the voices to her.
Right.
I thought she was wonderful. I loved it. I just thought it was the greatest tribute to Star Trek, to a what's it called?
The animated series.
The animated film. And I thought it was just great. And And at first, some of the actors, went, I'm not going in the minutes. And then they found out how much they were going to pay us. And, and everybody showed up. I would have done it for free, but I was so glad they didn't know that. Whatever we did, Genius had that magic touch. He seemed to know, he knew his audience, and he knew where he could go from there. And then he realized that the actors who were portraying the beloved characters were themselves fans. We were fans of the show.
So after the animated series and you're doing the conventions and that sort of keeping Star Trek alive, but then you start getting phone calls that there may be a new series and or a new movie. Did you think that they were kidding? I mean, did you think that this was possible to have a canceled TV series then become
of course.
A motion picture?
So what? It never happened before.
Yeah.
We were first in everything.
So you were pretty confident.
Oh, I was
that this
very
would happen
confident.
Again. Yeah.
I said, but of course, they were going, can you imagine? I said, well, I hadn't thought of it. I wish I had thought of it, but it's a natural progression to what Gene has given. He gave so much to the world through Star Trek and its success and its characters. We were the first interracial cast in anything that came on once a week, and everyone just knew it was not going to last. It'll never happen. It's an interracial cast. It'll never happen. We changed the face of television forever. Gene, did it. But we did he did through us, through what he gave to television. And then everybody suddenly were following suit. And so you can say that he's responsible for where we are today in television.
You just said some really nice things about Gene and it being his vision and his ideas that we see on screen. Realistically, TV show, movies are produced and created by a collaboration of people. So I'm curious, are there other people that we're not either recognizing, not giving enough tribute to, or understanding their contributions as well to push forward that vision?
Very much so. It was a total collaborative. But prior to that, there were very few shows that were collaborative. Gene is the first producer that had the power, that developed that power. But it was always a collaborative as far in his mind. He would come and talk to you for 40 minutes about what he thought about doing, whether it was with the other actors. He always came and talked to the actors about their role, about the new episode, about what was going on, about what he had in mind. And prior to that, and I guess that's why you hear me saying Gene so much, is because he was as involved with the success of it as having, beyond having written so well and created characters so well. A lot of times the creator doesn't have that power. Even the producer, so he was creator-producer, don't have that power. It's the powers that be that pay the right, that have that power. But if you believe this, if you think about this as I lived it, everybody on that set were fans of the show.
How did things change for you and for the character Uhura by the time you get into the movies?
First, I'm going to address something that I thought you were talking about when you said how did Uhura. It occurred to me that I named Uhura, and it was that luncheon that Gene took me to talk to me about the role, and he wanted the role to not just be an ordinary role. And I said, well, it looks like you're talking about universal characters. And so he said, well, yeah, they're from, Captain Kirk is from the Midwest boy, and so forth and so on. And I said, well, it's more than that, I think. I think it's from all over the world. And he looked at me, and I said, well, you have diverse characters. We're going to be going all over the place. Why wouldn't a character on the Starship Enterprise be from other places? And I said, like my character. And he was saying, well, I wanted to talk to you about my character. I said, she's from the United States of Africa, and the name is Uhura, which is, he said, it hadn't been named before. And I'm just smarting off over lunch. I'll have another vodka and tonic, please. And I said, you really want my opinion? And I said, I talked to him about it, and I said, she's not American. And he says, well, I don't want to. What do you mean? And I said, well, I think she's American, but her parents are from the United States of Africa. And it got real quiet. He said, okay, I like it. Where do we go from here? And I hadn't explored it more than knowing upstairs, in my brain, what I was talking about. But suddenly it formed words. I said, her name is like freedom. It's Uhura. And he said, where did that come from? I said, from the word Uhuru, which means freedom in Swahili. And that's her native tongue. And I'm just going on and spouting about it. And he said, you really know this character? And I didn't go, oh, yeah, blah, 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 blah. I suddenly realized that what I had just done. And I waited for him. I shut my mouth until I knew how he felt about it. And he said, I love it. Then I had to create a lifestyle. And these were her grandparents, and this is what happened to her when she came. And then I said to him, oh, by the way, the entire cast of this Starship Enterprise is from somewhere other than there, because we're gone where no man or woman has gone before. So it would have to be the best of everybody. And he just started laughing at me, and he said, and that's who I cast, talking about all of us,
I know you said you were kind of joking, saying, well, you knew it was going to be a movie because there were so many firsts. I'm assuming there must have been a big difference walking onto the set of a movie as opposed to walking onto the set of the TV series.
Truly.
Did the motion picture make it feel like, okay, I know we've had conventions, we've had the cartoon, we've had the TV series, okay, but now, this is getting real. Talk to me about, does that change sort of your thinking about Star Trek the first time you find out this is going to be a motion picture?
I think I always knew it was going to be a motion picture, because as far as I was concerned, it was a full-blown motion picture every episode. You could have taken any episode and expanded it to a full-blown movie. The elements were that's why I believe that the show was so popular and so successful. Is because I don't think there was an episode in which each and every aspect of it was attended to like a major motion picture.
I know this is not nice. It's like saying you're not supposed to ask a parent which is their favorite child. But when we move into the motion pictures, do you have
one?
I'm sorry. Say again.
We all know they have one.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I have a friend who tells the story about that. He will regularly ask his mother, "Who's your favorite?" And she'll say, "Oh, you know, I don't have a favorite. It's your brother."
Exactly.
So in the motion pictures, I mean, in all the movies, I mean, is there a favorite for you?
Of the movies?
Mm-hmm.
Each and every last one of them.
Okay. Well, now you just told me that that's not a real answer, though.
Especially in which Uhura had a major role.
Okay.
Fair enough.
Well, I used to tease Gene about it. I said, I would have, if he'd asked me what my favorite role was, I said any time Uhura got to say something beside hailing frequencies open, Captain.
I'll tell you honestly, I think
and that got Uhura more attention.
They did I think it was for Star Trek 4, The Voyage Home. They did this fantastic thing where you could call a 900 number. It was 50 cents. And you could call a 900 number and you would hear a message from one of the cast of the Enterprise. And my mom wouldn't let me call more than one time because, it's 50 cents. And I didn't have 50 cents, so I was allowed to call once.
How many did you sneak in there?
No, just the one. But I'll tell you, I still remember it. It was Lieutenant Uhura talking about the fear that she had heard. I mean, you show up for a 30-second message. I mean, I still remember the read.
Yeah.
That was kind of a neat thing. It was one of the first times it felt like that you were kind of breaking the wall between, what was going to be on the screen and sort of your real life. But yeah, I didn't feel ripped off at all. My message was from Uhura and I was completely happy.
Oh, that is so cool. That is so cool. Communications officer.
Yep, and you could just call her up on the phone. It was a wonderful time that we had moved into. As we're recording, we're beyond the series, we're beyond the animated series, we're beyond the original cast movies, and we're starting to see. Well, there's Spock on screen, but that's not Nimoy, and there's Kirk on screen, but that's not Shatner, and there's Uhura, but that's not Nichelle Nichols. As we start to remake some of Star Trek, well, I guess how does that sit with you? How are you feeling about that as we move to a new group of people, sort of walking around in your clothes?
I want them to clean those clothes and get them back to me immediately. I think it's appropriate because nothing stands still. And unless you were going to take, which would be very interesting, the characters onto with our ages, if you're going to keep it in the same on the voyages of the Starship Enterprise, then that's fine. Then you have to change, recast. But if you're going to go from the point in time that the show came on, when we were just starting out on our 5-year mission, and go beyond that, then you've got to go to my age, which is and
32. I'm sitting across from her, Ken. She's 32.
She would always be 32. But if you're going to go with the original cast, then it would have been very interesting to see because I'm thinking of the cast, and you would have the loss of some, and then you have to have the replacement or not, whatever, And I think that would have been very interesting too, But it brought the entire cast along time-wise.
I want
or
to ask
not.
you, So, as of recording this show, we're barreling toward the 50th anniversary of the premiere of Star Trek. And Star Trek actually goes back further than that because you had the original pilot,
Sure.
and of course Gene was in development before that. But we're getting to that kind of like landmark place. What do you think are the key takeaways? What do you think are the main points that Star Trek is trying to make about us as humanity, about how we treat each other, about what the future will be like? What do you think that maybe it's Gene, maybe it's just Star Trek as a whole is trying to say?
Gene's vision. And I think had he had his way and had lived long enough, we still would be living long and prosperous. And he would have, I believe, not tried to keep it in that same time slot, but he would have moved on because we've done we the actors have done some pretty marvelous things with our lives. I can only see that Uhura and Kirk and Spock and company would have done the same. And I believe, and I would be very interested in where he would have taken that.
When Gene set out to make Star Trek, he was doing things that were, for lack of a better word, bold. Putting an interracial cast on TV. He was telling stories that had moral points. And what do you think, when we look back at Star Trek, what were those things that Star Trek was trying to say to its audience?
Number one, I don't think Gene was trying to say it. I think he said it I was going to say ad nauseum, that's just an expression, but that means infinitely. He did some incredible things. And what I think the most incredible thing that he did with creating these characters, instead of trying to present them, because knowing Hollywood, they're not going to let you, present them on and grow. He left it to your imagination. We know, they know, the audience knows who each and every one of us characters, who let us develop such powerful characters that our audience knows as probably better than we do where we're going, who we are and where we're going. If that answers your question, I'm not sure that it does.
I think the characters evolve over time. The audience knows the characters, and I'm trying to think beyond that to the moral, the philosophical points that are there in Star Trek that are really speaking to an audience. One thing is that racial diversity, that there is some harmony presented in the future of how we work together.
And do not think that Gene's vision did not change, had everything to do. Do not think that it did not have everything to do with changing a society. If you're free enough to put it on television, I'm free enough to put it in my life. If I love it, there. And constantly people are doing it with shows not as anywhere near as great as Star Trek. Smaller things touch people if they love it. they go out and buy a dress to look like it, or it affects fashion, it affects food, it affects everything we do in life, depending on how it affects the person, And I think that's something that Gene knew before the studios really realized the magnitude of what we see on television, depending on what it is, how it affects our life. It affects how we think, because if it's done well, you look at it and you go, "That's what I mean." See, that's what I mean. It's there for us. I think that's something that he knew, instinctively or deliberately, or with matter of forethought. And he had both.
There are people who have, I assume this has happened to John. I know it's happened to me. There are people who laugh at how seriously I take some of the ideas that are presented in Star Trek. Do you feel like the cast, and do you feel like Gene, you guys were planting a seed, right?
I think Gene certainly knew that. I think depending on which one you're talking about of the cast came to know. I knew instinctively because I'm my father's daughter, and he would have known exactly. I knew instinctively what Gene was doing and the gift that he was giving humanity. When I say that, I'm not being facetious or complimentary. I'm just saying that he knew what he was talking about, and he put it down on paper, and then he put it on film, and then those who were open looked on and saw Star Trek, and some said, "Oh, what an interesting, entertaining show," and others, maybe less and more and more and more, said, "That's what I mean. That's what I'm talking about. That's where I'm going. That's the way life is, or should be. That's what my life is going to be."
Those are the smart people, and those are the ones who listen to our show.
That's right. That's right. There you go, baby.
Hey, you had such a personal closeness to Gene, and I wanted to ask something without bringing our show down, but I read recently that when he passed away in 91, you wrote and performed a song for his funeral, for his memorial service called Gene. And I just wanted to ask you about it. I wanted to ask what was the message in that song? What were you saying with that song?
Are the impetus for it?
Well, I know. Yeah. Just give us a little background and tell us about the.
Gene was the impetus. Everything I knew about him, and when they asked me to sing at his funeral, I thought, there's no song that could portray him, that other than, wonderful person, incredible man. And I just sat down and I started writing. I didn't intend to. I'll have to write this, But suddenly, it was everything about the man. And I only touched a portion of it. But I realized there was no one song that I could sing that, not that it wouldn't have been fine, but everybody does that at a funeral. But I wanted it to be Gene. And so I wrote Gene, and I put on the top of the page Gene, and then I went, okay, now what? And it wrote itself.
So again, all of the different permutations that Star Trek has been going through. And then, of course, we have the new films now with the new cast and J.J. Abrams sort of spearheading that. Everybody gets to rewrite Star Trek in a way. So this is your pitch meeting. You're going to now say, okay, I've got this great idea, and here's what happens to Uhura 5 years, 10 years, 15. But when you stop and play with the character, and you've got this, like a whole new, set of toys with which to play, what do you see? What would you like to see happening to Uhura down the road?
Oh, if I answered that question, it would be limiting Uhura. Because Star Trek lives. You've heard that more than once.
Yeah.
And because Star Trek lives, it doesn't stop. So each time that Star Trek has a new cast, it lives in its own permutation, I think. I think it doesn't end, if that makes any sense. It is as large and as huge and as far-reaching and as life is itself. So it doesn't end with what Nichelle Nichols decides where it goes or doesn't go.
Mm-hmm.
Because for Nichelle Nichols, it doesn't stop. Each person who creates, who's honored with getting the opportunity to portray Uhura or Spock or Kirk or any of the characters has perhaps a new vision. It might not be to each and every person's liking, but it won't be to each and every person's distaste either. And so I think that I'm honored because each person, even if I don't agree with their impression of it, mm-hmm. has a vision. And I'm responsible for that vision being there because, Gene Roddenberry is, bless his heart, because he cast me to create the character. And when I created the character and took it to him, he was almost blown away. He said, it's how I would have wanted to create her. He gave me almost a blank sheet of paper with the thing. I named the character. I created her. She comes from the United States of Africa. Her parents, I went from who her parents were, her grandparents, their expectations of her were, how she was honored and had the responsibility for creating her life as her parents, grandparents, and would have expected her to, without limiting her to their expectations.
If I'm hearing you correctly, then you don't see an end goal for Uhura. You just want to see her keep flying.
It's not an okay fine. If you mess with Uhura, it's not okay fine with me. But if you're a creative person and you get to play Uhura, then you get to bring into that entity the best of you. And if you do that, then you've got the best of Uhura.
So where's Uhura?
She's sitting right here in front of you. Everything that I've done with my life and will continue to do with my life, she's done. She will do. She will do in her way, because I breathe life into her, and I would expect no less. JJ took me to lunch, and he says, you must come back on the set. And I said, oh, I wouldn't have it any other way. And so they had chairs, a chair for him and me, And then Saldana came on the set, and he had not told anyone I was coming on. So when I walked on the set, people were going, as a matter of fact, there was one guy working the set, and there were cables on the ground. And he was just looking down. He don't step on that. He says, you'll not. And he looked up in the, oh my God. Oh, he saw me step across it, but I said, of course. And he looked up and he's, oh my God. He's going, I'm telling you. It was wonderful. It was wonderful. We went on the set, and I'm Saldana. So she comes on and she sits, and she sees me and she goes, nobody told me you were going to be. We became, like, they brought a tall chair for her to sit beside me, and we sat and talked. And she stopped being nervous, and we had the time of our life, setting up. And so I stayed way longer than I had intended to, because they wouldn't let me leave. And they were setting up for something from way up above that they were going to be shooting from down, so it took longer time. And we got to talk, and she would ask me questions about Uhura. And it got to have one question. I said, well, then that's up to you, though. I don't know. I can't tell you about that. And she says, but you're Uhura. I said, of course I'm Uhura. So are you. and she said, but, and I said, Uhura's in all of us. Just whatever you loved in that character that you saw is in you, and it's up to you to aggrandize that or not. Take it to that next step, because I don't know what she's going to do until she does it. She doesn't tell me all the time. And she laughed so hard. Uhura doesn't tell you. Who does she tell? I said, you're Uhura. And she really thanked me. She said it really liberated me, to talk with you. And I said, I just gave her to you, that's all. I put her in your hands, and I believe she's in good hands.
So, Ken, at the beginning of the interview, I said that I was sitting across the table from Lieutenant Uhura, and I guess straight from her mouth now, I am sitting across the table from Lieutenant Uhura.
Indeed you are. Hailing frequencies are all open.